Thank you for staying with us. The Supreme Court has set aside a judgment by the lower court that dismissed the terrorism charges against the leader of the Indigenous People of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu. After challenging the Court of Appeal's decision which ordered Kanu's release, the Apex Court ordered him to return to the Federal High Court, Abuja, to face his 7th count of terrorism. We have details in this report.
It was not a good day for Nnamdi Kanu's family and friends, as they had hoped that the Supreme Court would align itself with the judgment of the Court of Appeal. The Supreme Court swayed in another direction to say, although due process of criminal law was not followed, the federal government was in violation of Kenya Extradition Act and Nigerian Extradition Act, it does not render the trial an illegality. Justice Emmanuel Augim, who read the lead judgment, held that the violation of Mr. Kanu's right ought to have been filed by way of civil procedure. The lower court remained in the realms of sentiments in the case. Justice Augim asks if law enforcement means to do anything to enforce the law. He answers in the negative, as it does not mean to commit a crime to enforce the law. He says the court cannot uphold the judgment of the Court of Appeal.
The Supreme Court is the Supreme Court. What the Supreme Court says represents the law. We respect it. We go by it. We had hoped that it would come our way, but it has gone the other way.
Came very heavy on the security agencies, where they have in any way, impaired on the rights, the fundamental rights of the defendant. However, our laws have made very clear provision for remedy. Where there's such infraction on the right of the defendant, then you can such a defendant can go to the civil court.
Mr. Kanu has been in detention since June 2021, when he was rearrested in Kenya after the federal government was alleged to have forcefully extradited him to Nigeria. He was arraigned before the Federal High Court in Abuja on a 4-count charge of treasonable felony, conspiracy to commit treasonable felony, terrorism, illegal importation of radio equipment.
Extract from the ruling of the Supreme Court today, Khan as the father of the nation, issue a broadcast and then issue knowledge, discontinue the trial and grant him unconditional bail and commence the process for political and political solutions to the matter.
Although the Supreme Court sympathized with Mr. Kanu on how he was extraordinarily renditioned to Nigeria, the court says the law must remain the law. With this judgment, Mr. Kanu will have to go back to the Federal High Court, Abuja, and appear before Justice Binta Inyangu to answer to the remaining 7-count charges against him. Celestina Iria, TVC News, Abuja.
Well, joining us in the studio and via Zoom are 2 lawyers. Jide Olugun is here in the studio. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Good to see you again.
And via Zoom, we have Olayinka Oladanios. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning for having me. Thank you for having me.
Right. Let's get your perspective to this decision by the Supreme Court. Was this what you expected?
Well, for me, I do not expect anything different. Like we know that Supreme Court is not a Father Christmas arena where Santa Claus dishes out gifts. And don't forget also, Supreme Court will have to go through the law and follow due process, and irrespective what is involved, the law has to come to place. And the judgment from the Supreme Court is so clear on law, because under the Evidence Act, there is nowhere written that even if you obtain evidence by illegality, it cannot still be admissible and it cannot be used against the defendant in court. So, it cannot be used in evidence in court. So that is what has happened at the Supreme Court. There's not, though some of us expected that, okay, if Supreme Court has said that, for instance, about the bail, Supreme Court made it clear that if someone was, on bail, and then the next thing is you storm his apartment or his house to raid him, and of course anybody will be afraid. It could be that, he's afraid that, they want to kill me and all that. And the man flees. So if that has happened, and if someone is on bail and you still have to do that, I think, the federal government had given, and I'm sure if you hear the Supreme Court very well, it chastised and he made it clear to the government that it was not, what they did, their action was not properly done. Having said that, he went further to say, look, this cannot deter a no case submission. I cannot say that you do not have case. You should not say that I should let you go, irrespective if the Court of Appeal had considered some other issues and had said, okay, that he should go. Because out of the 15 count charges, we can see that he still had seven left to answer. So there's still case on the 7. And that is what Supreme Court is saying, okay, go back to High Court, to Federal High Court, and answer this 7, even if the 8 cannot fly. Go back and answer the 7 cases. Unfortunately, I remember vividly that some of us spoke about how it was how absurd it was for federal government the way Kanu was kidnapped, because that's the word I used then, that he was kidnapped, and Kenya has to be brought to Nigeria. Due process was not followed as repatriation and on how to get Kanu to Nigeria. So unfortunately, what some of us said that then return Kanu, then go through the due process. If you want Kanu to come back to Nigeria and answer his case, but event has taken over this. And I think another fear is for Kanu to say, even if I go back to this High Court, am I going to get justice? So these fears are glaring. So now going back, but unfortunately, there's nothing Supreme Court can do but to play his role, as the apex court, and what Supreme Court has not done anything out of place. That was a good judgment from Supreme Court. But I expected that if Supreme Court had considered what Court of Appeal has said, and I felt that Supreme Court should have just gone ahead to support the judgment coming from the Court of Appeal. But unfortunately, it's the apex court, and they have their reason for giving such judgment to say, go back to the Federal High Court and answer this case. I think for us, it's still part of democracy, and we are moving forward. And well, in all, there's still some other parts to this, but I will leave it here for now.
Okay, Mr. Ola Daniels, let's put you on hold. We'll take you up on the latter part of your analysis where you said you would rather have had the Supreme Court rule otherwise, or toe the line, so to speak, of the lower courts. But let's compare your thoughts so far with that of Mr. Ologu in the studio. So what do you make of these flaws that the Supreme Court highlighted on the part of the federal government in the manner it brought in extradited Nnamdi Kanu?
Thank you very much. Interestingly, Nnamdi Kanu is still there, but we have a new president now. All this happened during the tenure of the former president,
Muhammad
Buhari. So, and the federal government is taking the big posture now, because despite the fact that the Supreme Court castigated the federal government for acting irresponsibly, so who holds the federal government to accountability? And the justices made a very vital point, that there is no legislation that makes that irresponsible act strong enough to prevent the prosecution of Nnamdi Kanu. So we are now back to the tracks of the law, and that he has to go back and face those charges. He already pleaded not guilty, which has thrown the prosecution open. And in the criminal justice value chain, we talk about 3 important pillars: thorough investigation, diligent prosecution, and a committed judiciary. And let me say this about the judiciary. From what have happened recently in Nigeria, putting the judiciary on the front burner, I think the judiciary is now awake to be very careful. And that is why blames were apportioned accordingly. So I will now be waking up the National Assembly. The National Assembly is not a playground. It's a work studio. to monitor this case as it is going and make necessary amendments to our laws to cover likely situations like this. And for the defendants' attorneys to listen to the Supreme Court. If you are talking about fundamental human rights, go and sue in the appropriate court for that. You see, the judiciary is not a sensational environment. And I listened to a commentator also saying that political approaches should be thrown into this. And I hope that works. But as we speak now, we are talking about legal matters because the president himself, if he wants to be political, may throw in his weight to say, oh, during his time, Nnamdi Kanu has been released. But if that is done again, the same Nigerians will wake up and say the judiciary is in the pocket of the president. So what are we advised right now is that the defending team should go back to their chambers, sit down, look at these cases, because the presumption of innocence is still in our constitution. That even when you have criminal allegations against anyone, you must prove these allegations beyond all reasonable doubts. So that window is still there. But sensationalism may not do anything here. You know, sentiments may not do anything here. Law is about facts. Law is about law. And we still have Section 131 of of the Evidence Act of Nigeria that says that you have the burden of proof. But this time around, in criminal matters, it is the prosecutor that must prove the matter beyond all reasonable doubt. So what the defending team should do is to go and study very well and ensure that Nnamdi Kanu is sufficiently defended to be let off the hook. And we also have allusions to the fact that if a man is on bail and his life became threatened, what natural instinct do you expect? That he jumps out and you went bringing him illegally. So we have a lot of gaps in this case. But I know that with the expertise of legal practitioners and, of course, with the silent political interventions, we should come to the end of this matter. It's just disturbing to me that the consequences have been very daring, particularly the economic negative impact in the southeastern part of the country, the insecurity that has been engendered sustainably in that part of the country. And I hope all this will be considered. And finally, let me say this, the judiciary is highly unpredictable because many would have expected that what the Supreme Court will declare is that, okay, release him, on bail, let him go. It doesn't fly that way most of the time.
All right, let's come back to you now, Mr. Daniels, on something you mentioned earlier, talking about you were hoping the Supreme Court would tow the path of the appeals court. Do you expatiate on what you meant?
Yeah, sometimes there's what we call a judgment of necessity. You know, Supreme Court, the people at the Supreme Court are human beings. And, I mean, they know what is happening in the country. Well, number of times I'll give it to Supreme Court. They've come to the, to the aid of the country to actually soften some issues that were really gaining momentum on the sad part. I expected that same will be considered at this point. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court had to go by the law. And what do I mean by rules of necessity? You know that at the moment, we are trying to unite the country. You know that at the moment, a lot of things are wrong with us, and we're trying to fix them. Considering what is happening in the Southeast at the moment, I expected Supreme Court to look at the judgment from the Court of Appeal and to align themselves with the judgment of the Court of Appeal. Unfortunately, that is not what we have. But I feel that there's still a possibility of still fixing this. And that is why we have Attorney General. And if you look at it now, At least it's not the other administration, the attorney general that went to, that went on appeal is no longer there. So we know that it's continuity. The office should be a continuity office, but then we have a new attorney general today, and there is nothing wrong in him going to High Court to enter nolli prosecute, to say, look, we are not interested in this matter again. We have looked at it. We have conducted our investigation. We have seen that. We have seen this. I think this matter, it shouldn't go further. He is the only one that has power to enter nolli now, to go to Court of Appeal. To High Court.
All right. Olayinka Daniels, it appears that we have some form of glitch from his end, but if you can still hear us, let's just come back to the studio pending when we bring you back. Well, on the other side, okay, Yinka Daniels, you're back. Please carry on. We lost your audio at a point.
Oh, my apologies. Yeah. I was saying that at the moment, from what we have today, if Supreme Court has not told the lines that some of us expected, as in meaning that to align themselves with the Court of Appeal, but I'm talking about, rules of necessity, and that the Attorney General of the Federation can go to Federal High Court and enter nolli prosecute to say, we are no longer interested in this matter. We have conducted investigation. We have done this, and the way it is right now, I think this matter should end here and should be resolved. And he goes there and he discontinues the prosecution of Kanu at the Federal High Court. And this whole matter, is resolved. And we leave it there because there's nothing. Supreme Court has done their part by going through the law. And like I said, I do not owe anything against Supreme Court on this judgment because that is the position of the law. However, we have more expectation because we are considering the unity, togetherness of this nation, and we know what is happening in the Southeast as we speak. We know what is happening in the country. Whatever we can do to bring the country together, the laws are made for people. People are not made for the law. So if whatever we can do as a people to come together to see how we can have solutions to this, I think we should try all our possible best.
There are those who are already proposing a political solution to addressing this matter. How do you think that would work in the midst of all of the concerns or issues being thrown up by the courts?
Well, the court has done their part, like I said. And that what I have said about the Attorney General entering nolli prosecute is still part of political solution. And what they can also do is to call Mr. Kanu and his crew and say, look, let's dialogue. Then probably he will sign an undertaking that, look, we will not go on this again, and we will, even at all, we want to consider it not the route we're going. We'll go through due process, we'll go through the normal process to get whatever we are asking for, but not this route. I think if he can do that, to sign an undertaking, and the Attorney General enter a nolli prosecute, it doesn't matter whether Supreme Court had even say, okay, go ahead and go ahead on prosecution. Yes, he has said, the Supreme Court has given his own judgment. So we must let the Nigerians understand the power of Attorney General also to discontinue such matter. So that can also happen, and that is the political solutions we are looking at here now. Because this is beyond law, because law has done its part, but for us as a people, the rule of necessity is important. When things want to go some route, I think the legislature can come in, judiciary, they've done their part. Then the federal government, the executive can also look at it to say, okay, where we are today, how do we salvage this whole situation? And I think that can be done. We can consider that, look, no matter what we do, whether we enter nolli prosecute and discontinue this prosecution, whether we continue this prosecution, people will talk. You will have different school of thought. You have different, groups that will say different things. So we just have to make a decision. We must take a step to salvage whatever Ghananism we have in the country at the moment.
All right.
And that is one of the political situations that we some of us, we are open to see.
Mr. Ologun, with you now, when you look at the actions of the Supreme Court in terms of justification, and we've seen lawyers also, arguing for and against the decision of the Supreme Court ordering Nnamdi Kanu to return back to the lower court for his trial. But then it has also been said that perhaps the Supreme Court could have, also made a verdict on the issue of bail. What do you think, that perhaps the Supreme Court should have also ordered, seeing as it had already slammed the federal government for being irresponsible, perhaps even go ahead to, ask that or order that he be released on bail? What do you think?
The Supreme Court is not a political office. It's a judicial office. And let me say this, Supreme Court has helped the defending team. I recall in my secondary school day, the St. Patrick's College, Okakoko, our history teacher came into the classroom and started telling us the story, that there was a time his teacher came into the classroom and started asking some questions. And he was writing those questions on the board, and that all those questions came out during the exam. I caught him right there. And I wrote those questions, went to prepare for it, and I excelled in history. The Supreme Court has helped. Let me amplify it. If you are suing on fundamental human rights, go and do this. You see, go back. You have pleaded not guilty. Go back to the court. Defend yourself. It's not the one prosecuting. And my brilliant learned colleague has told us the power of the Attorney General.
Right.
You see? So, because right now, because of the sensationalism we have gone through, the president cannot come out and say, release Nnamdi Kanu. Some parts of the country may wake up and say, because he wants to score. He doesn't even have that power, constitutionally speaking.
Leaders of the Southeast are saying that it's not for the Supreme Court to do, but the president.
Yes, because I also agree with the doctrine of necessity, which can be invoked. But you have to go through the legal process. For example, if he goes back to the Federal High Court and the defendants do what they should do, and the justice decides at the end of the day that this man is discharged and acquitted, let him go. There is a record. It's like when we conduct elections in professional bodies, and you even have a single candidate, nobody contending. We still say, let us vote for the record purpose. That do you support that this person be returned unopposed, so that in the future, when reference is made to it, we can bring it out. And let me say this, with what we have experienced in the southeastern part of the country, I want this matter over as quickly as possible. I was born in 1966. The Civil War started in 1967, that ended in 1970, on this same issue of secession from Nigeria. It did not fly. Biafra project is still on. I started analyzing this Nnamdi Kanu's matter as soon as the former President Muhammadu Buhari came to office, when he started it. And I made a point. There is a very thin line between peaceful protest and violence. And we see where we are today. And I'm sad that the southeastern part of the country has been negatively impacted in terms of the economy. Again, the insecurity in that region. In fact, other elements would have infiltrated. So whatever we need to do, let's do it. But the judiciary should be seen to be functioning as a judicial body, not as a political body. So let them go back on the instructions of the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the land, since 1963 when we became a republic. And I respect the position of the learned silk that if Supreme Court has spoken, who are we to say no to it? And go back, and in public relations, you have different approaches that you can engage to ensure that you have your way. So let the team go back to the drawing board, look at how they can engage, and let the laws be presented from the angle that we make them get him out of the net. And I also strongly support that if the Attorney General of the Federation rises up after Christmas to say that there is nothing to prosecute in this matter, who are we to argue? You recall the case of Orubebe. You know, the Attorney General said there is no case here. How do you argue? There is a legislation supporting that. And if that is the political solution we are talking about, but please let due process be followed, because we still have issues that will come up even after the release of Nnamdi Kanu. How do we deal with the habitual insecurity that some are already addicted to?
So you don't think that will douse the tension, calm every frayed nerves, address the matters of security? Because that's the reason that some are putting forward that if he is released, these issues will be addressed automatically.
I hope it does. But with my knowledge of criminology, I doubt it will.
Why
because
not?
some people, there is what you call conditioning in industrial psychology. Some people have been conditioned to crime, to, and we have, it's just like a saying, because we have a new president, oil theft will stop. Oil theft has not stopped. There's still crime in the land. So it's just like when you talk about South Africa. South Africa engaged violence to be delivered from apartheid. And if you go and profile South Africa now, the level of violence there, even though it's not amplified in the media, you'll be amazed. That is conditioning. And it's unfortunate that we have allowed our country to, create a very vibrant platform for insecurity. Look at when we talk about banditry, something that just started, and they keep on demanding for different things. Look at this sit-at-home order. And I appreciate the fact that at a point, even Kanu started dissociating himself. But what about EPA?
Yes.
Who is outside the country, finding the ember of insecurity in the country? So we still have a holistic project when it comes to establishing the motto of Nigeria that talks about unity, faith, peace, and progress. So releasing Nnamdi Kanu is one of it. It should help. I hope it does. But the federal government, the state government, all major stakeholders should come together to discuss the unity of this country that many say is not a topic for discussion, and see how we can relate together as a people and enjoy the good of this land. Because if it's not ethnic division, it's religious division. But what I know, to anchor my submissions here, is that Amos 3:3 says, can two walk together except they be agreed? And I think that should be the consideration right now. But talking about the legal approach, it must be approached judicially. And we hope that the stakeholders will come together and give consideration to the fact that we all need to come out of where we are as a nation now and be repositioned on the path of prosperity.
Let me quickly confirm, clarify Yinka Daniel's position, especially with what Mr. Ologun here has said about fears that the insecurity in the southeastern region, has festered for this long. And so the potential release of Nnamdi Kanu might not, totally solve the problem of insecurity. There are people who have, who will see or who continue to see the rife situation there as, working in their advantage. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I do not. Well, for me, I think releasing Nnamdi Kanu will do a lot. Don't forget that Nnamdi Kanu started this whole secessional thing, and it was when he was arrested and detained and all that, that this issue of stay at home and all that started. So irrespective of what EPAN is doing, I am sure that if Kanu is released, it will cushion the tension. And also the security issue, because one thing about security is not left to just security agencies. Everyone should be involved in security. Because the people that are fighting, that are killing, that are maiming and doing whatever at that zone are human beings. And I can say categorically that there are leaders in that zone. and they cannot tell us that they are not aware or they do not know. That is where dialogue, engagement of these leaders comes in with federal government. They need to talk to them. If, like I said, Nnamdi is signing an undertaking, and for that to happen, it means that some people are going to be involved. The entire leaders of the Southeast will have to come together to say,
Mr. Daniels, are you there? Okay, let's come back to the studio now while we wait for Mr. Daniels' return. This matter of having a conversation, looking for a political solution, we've been seeing leaders of the Southeast speak and even pointing accusing fingers across within themselves that some persons are even against the release of Nnamdi Kanu from within the Southeast. And I'm wondering how this matter of trust is also a major factor. If they are to push for a political solution, what should be the positioning of their conversation? Who would they trust to push forward this matter of having a political solution with the government as it is? There's seemingly no trust.
You know, we are talking about the southeastern part of the country. There are governors there.
They have accused them of not doing enough.
There are senators from there.
The same thing.
There are House of Reps members from there. And that is the point I made. You see, I was commenting on the case of Hamas and Israel, the battle going on in the Gaza, and the interventions of the United Nations. And I pointed it out clearly that some superpowers, they supply ammunition. So for them, peace is not on the table, even when they come out to speak for peace. And that is the picture you just painted. Some people benefit more. I started complaining when we were reading about trucks going to the southeastern part of the country, having accident and ammunition. Who were those moving those ammunitions there? You know, I mean, the southeastern part of the country has become a fertile ground for crime right now. I hope it is reversed. It's my strong desire. But are the opinion leaders united in ensuring this? When you study the politics, when you study everything going on there. And that's why I am going beyond the picture of releasing Nnamdi Kanu. It's my strong desire. But beyond it, how do we leverage on the benefits of that release? You know, how do we engage those who are in the trenches, you know, with their ammunition, with their guys, you know, that no, let us stop this. I intentionally mentioned the fountain of this, which was the secession attempt from Nigeria. 1967 till now is about 56 years, and we are still dealing with these agitations. When Boko Haram started in around year 2000, it was, you know, war against Western education. Look at where we are today. We are reading about reports of bandits pushing people away from territories, demanding taxation from them and everything. It has become a way of life for some. So I hope that as we are working on releasing Nnamdi Kanu, who is a frontliner in this campaign of self-actualization, you know, and stuff like that, that we are also looking at how to handle the society and reposition the society back to the track of prosperity. And I can recommend here a template that can be studied, the template of Rwanda. Paul Kagame did it, you know. At a time, ethnicity messed up the whole nation. But the man started by working on the psyche of the citizens, and they became united again. So let's look at those things that will unite us more, you know. But my greatest joy will be to see Nnamdi Kanu released, and like the Supreme Court told the federal government, that you need to watch your reputation on the global space, because the way he was brought into the country. But you see, when we have different errors coming together, you know, it's quite ugly. So these are issues of my concern.
And you seem pretty hopeful that the government would reach a political solution which will include an eventual release of Nnamdi Kanu. But then there are alleged crimes that are roped on his neck, so to speak, which he has to answer to. So I just wonder how you balance your desires amidst what brought him to where he was, what he did to earn this prosecution.
We've said it. The Supreme Court is saying, go back to the Federal High Court, right? Go and face the prosecution. He has the right, fundamental human right, of defense. So let the defending lawyers.
We've even heard the defense say that now they will prosecute, they will focus on
exactly.
getting him out on bail.
Look at where you have not focused. You see, the election tribunals threw up a lot of gaps in litigations. Do the needful. And I am of the opinion that the judicial arm is willing to help us solve this problem because it's affecting our nation.
All right.
So, and if, like I said earlier, tips have been given that do this, do this, do that, do this, and you don't do them. And don't forget at a time that even some relations of Nnamdi Kanu complained bitterly that his team of lawyers were not representing him well. These are issues. The law is not a joke. You are there to get someone out of trouble. It's a huge assignment. Put everything into it. You don't have to be sentimental. So if they now go back, it's just like somebody on the football field. When you get near the goalpost, you play outside. And somebody is coming to tell you, to show you, this is the goalpost.
All right.
Direct your shot here.
All right. We have to leave the conversation here now. We must thank you, lawyer Jide Ologun, as well as Olayinka Oladaniels, for your time on the program. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
very much.
God bless Nigeria.
Amen.